Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Simon from Hive Business, and I'm joined today by Paul Graham, Head of Dental from Christie Co.
Hi, Simon.
Thanks for joining us today, Paul. Um, I suppose people are probably getting used to us having these kind of quarterly updates, but I thought we'd spend 10 minutes just chatting about how things are going in the dental market since we last spoke. It's probably been around about a quarter and a lot of interesting developments. What have you seen? How are things looking from your side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. No, nice to catch up again, and thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
I
welcome.
think that the quarter past has whizzed by again. We kind of had a conversation at the start of the year, didn't we? And
Yeah.
we were mapping out trends on the back of 2022. Um, and quite frankly and very honestly, we saw definitely a quieter Q1 this year. I think a healthy recalibration in the market. Things were just adjusting again, um, overlapped with various news in the economy. I think that's just kind of created a little bit of a, a stale position. I think speaking to my colleagues on the who are kind of at the helm of it all, I think really good to see a very active 5 6 weeks that's just passed by. Um, I think there's been a lot of spectators, but I think there's just been a little
Mm.
bit of a turn in the last 5 6 weeks to see some of those businesses coming to the market now, confidence returning from a buyer perspective. Generally, I think that the buyers have always been there. They've not kind of shied away or
Yeah.
stopped being acquisitive. They've just generally slowed down, but I think that pace is picking up again.
Mm.
Corporates, especially, some big instructions come to the market, and typically you would hone in on who's capable of purchases of that size, and it would be corporate operators. It,
Hmm.
it kind of fits their criteria, and it's nice to see probably 90% of those back at the table again and keen to acquire.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it probably mirrors what we've seen in the last few weeks as well. Certainly more people approaching us for advice and support on buying practices. And actually that's the non-corporates as well. So there's obviously the independents are picking up their purchasing again as well.
Mm.
Have you seen, you obviously say there's kind of more buyers coming out of the woodwork that things have perhaps stabilized a little bit, although it might be a bit premature to say that. Have you seen more sellers kind of deciding that now is a safe time to pull the trigger? Have you seen a bit of stabilization in pricing or anything like that?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, those operators with a private practice are still performing very well despite the economic matters, rising costs, a bit of tightening in consumer spending
Mm.
generally. But actually, you look at those dental businesses are still benefiting from some of the kind of particular private practices, the best weeks and months, and it's still a very
Yeah,
robust and stable business.
yeah,
And I think as long as we see that continue, and it's sustainable, those operators are very much in control of their own destiny. They have that ability to say, okay, I'm ready to sell now, or actually, I'm still enjoying the business. It's still performing well. It's on this upward curve. Um, I might consider selling if the price is right. Um, what we probably have to be mindful of is the demand from those buyers for that type of business just now. Um, it's not it's not like the crazy spend and appetite during the pandemic, that
mm,
that trend that appeared. But the market's still incredibly strong. Those deals still reflect excellent opportunities and reasons to sell.
yeah. I think there's a general acceptance, or there seems to be an acceptance now that actually the prices we were seeing, the multiples we were seeing during the pandemic were, extraordinary. That's not usual. And things have rolled back a bit, but still to a great position. Dentistry and the multiples we're seeing compared with other industries that we're aware of, still really strong. Sellers are still receiving a good price for what they've got to sell, particularly private. Um,
Yeah. I agree.
That's from our side of it. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think there's a bit of a kind of mindset shift from
mhm.
that trend that quickly appeared during the pandemic. And as a result, ultimately, of some of those larger corporates who were growing rapidly, getting ready for sale themselves. So,
Mhm.
there was various
Yes.
components in that appetite that weren't necessarily market related or related to a particular practice that they were acquiring. It was a kind of bigger picture of what they were about to achieve or try to achieve. So I think when that dissipates slightly, and we get back to a kind of stable ground and playing field, we come back to those businesses that are still performing very well in this marketplace and the buyers that are still there. I think that's generally when we're talking about corporate activity. Private buyers, they maybe a little bit more sensitive just in terms of interest rate hikes, etc.
Mhm.
So perhaps taking a little bit longer in their due diligence.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think opportunities are still there, and evidently on the back of some corporate disposal work, private buyers are still very keen to acquire. Pricing of a practice and the opportunity that they're
Yeah.
acquiring is the key component, though. That's the part that has to be right.
Definitely. We've people who follow our content will know we've written a bit recently about the need for the practices to be much more of a business, and actually that's kind of fed through to the buyers as well. I think buyers are a bit more um, uh, paying a bit more attention to what they're acquiring rather
Yeah.
than following the well-trodden trajectory of, well, eventually I'm going to buy something, it might as well be the thing closest to me. They're actually really kind of studying what they're buying. Prices are kind of squeezing, costs are squeezing, profit margins are squeezing, the cost of borrowing is going up. So, whilst the banks, certain banks still have a lot of appetite for dentistry and still believe it's a strong market, which actually is kind of good news for the market in itself, that the banks still have that appetite. It does mean you have to be a bit more discerning, and that kind of feeds through to everything you've just been saying as well. I believe it's reflective of that.
Yeah.
What about the NHS side of things? Because it's always interesting to kind of touch upon that, because everybody will be familiar with the challenges NHS presents. I think when we were last speaking, we were talking about how they were kind of starting to look much less attractive to a
Mm.
buyer. Has that trend continued, or?
Yeah, I think there's almost a kind of tale of two halves in the
Mm,
NHS. There's the underperforming practice that has associate retention issues,
mm-hmm,
yeah, performance issues. It's not delivering its contracted UDA volume. Um, those businesses just now are being viewed through a certain lens of a buyer who either looks at it and thinks, I can turn that around. I can take a hands-on approach. I can deliver 6,000 UDAs myself. I've got a partner coming in who can join me. Um, or there's the other operator who's looking at it and thinking, actually, it's in an area where recruitment is really difficult. I feel too nervous. I'm not going to take that on. The demand is still there, but it's subject to those two elements, really.
yeah.
We look at some of the larger operators and typically kind of semi-corporate and corporate operators with core NHS practices in their existing portfolio. Um, they are very much kind of hopeful for a change within the NHS and access issues with new dentists coming in, for overseas dentists coming in to help deliver those contracts. I, I think there's a little bit of crystal ball gazing with that, but there seems to be more momentum than ever before
Mm-hmm.
to try and improve that framework, that barrier to entry. And that might be a turning point for some of those NHS practices. It'll be interesting to see. Um, but yeah, look, I think it's a part of dentistry that is in a state of flux just now.
Yeah.
Um, that does need to be priced accordingly based on performance. Is there still demand from buyers? Yes. I think That's ultimately the answer I would give. But it's subject, more than ever before, subject to X, Y, and Z, really.
Mhm.
I think this will be a bit of a kind of moving picture as we go through the remainder of the year. Um, I think it's interesting to see the demand's still very much there for private practices. I recall at the turn of this year, many people kind of wondering, is that bubble going to burst? Clearly, that doesn't look as though that's going to be the case. It's very sustainable by the
Mhm.
trends that are starting to appear.
That's really good. I think, I mean, maybe I'll summarize what I'm hearing from that side of things is actually dentistry is still in a really strong place. Maybe a few more question marks on NHS, which is perhaps standing on a precipice. Which way is it going to go? We're not sure. Time will tell, but in general, the market for dental practices still really strong. Buyers still have appetite. Lenders are still supporting it. Every reason to be positive.
That's a very good summary. It's I suppose you take comfort in looking at other areas of commerce, other sectors, industries. This kind of hiccup that's going on is not uncommon. We've
Mhm.
seen it before. I think having a health related needs based sector, yeah, will ultimately remain robust. Look, I think this blip that's ongoing just now, um, just all of a sudden feels as though there's a little bit of a turn already. Last 5, 6 weeks,
Mhm.
certainly that sentiment has changed again, I feel. And I think a positive outlook and second half of the year, I think, is what lies ahead.
Definitely. Well, Paul, thank you for your time today. Look forward to catching up again in another few months, and we'll see what's materialized and whether any of that crystal ball gazing has proved to be correct.
Definitely.
In the meantime, if anybody's interested in acquiring or selling a practice, Hive Business can help. Christie Co can help. Contact details are available, and would love to hear from you. So, Paul, thank you very much. See you next time.
Thank you. Thanks, Simon.
Bye.